Today we are going to know about World War I with the help of deep facts and some original images of World War I. A century ago, an assassin, a Serbian nationalist, killed the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary as he visited Sarajevo. This act was the catalyst for a massive conflict that lasted 4 years. More than 65 million soldiers were mobilized by more than 30 nations, with battles taking place around the world. Industrialization brought modern weapons, machinery, and tactics to warfare, vastly increasing the killing power of armies. Battlefield conditions were horrific, typified by the chaotic, cratered hellscape of the Western Front, where soldiers in muddy trenches faced bullets, bombs, gas, bayonet charges, and more. In 1914, Austria-Hungary was a powerful and huge country, larger than Germany, with nearly as many citizens. It had been ruled by Emperor Franz Joseph I since 1848, who had been grooming his nephew, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, as the heir to the throne. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Czech Countess Sophie Chotek, are departing a reception at City Hall. Earlier that morning, on the way to the hall, their motorcade had been attacked by one of a group of Serbian nationalist assassins, whose bomb damaged one car and injured dozens of bystanders. The Archduke and his wife climbed into the open car, headed for a nearby hospital to visit the wounded. Just blocks away, though, the car paused to turn around, directly in front of another assassin, who walked up to the car and fired 2 shots, killing both Franz Ferdinand and his wife. Assassin Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb who killed the Archduke, was recruited along with 5 others by Danilo Ilic, a friend and fellow Bosnian Serb who was a member of the Black Hand secret society. Their ultimate goal was the creation of a Serbian nation. The conspiracy, assisted by members of Serbia's military, was quickly uncovered, and the attack became a catalyst that would soon set massive armies marching against each other around the world. All of the assassins were captured and tried. 13 received medium to short prison sentences, including Princip, who was too young for the death penalty and received the maximum, a 20-year sentence. 3 of the conspirators were executed by hanging. For years after the assassination, Gavrilo Princip died in prison, brought down by tuberculosis, which was worsened by harsh conditions brought on by the war he helped set in motion. Shortly after the assassination, Austria-Hungary issued a list of demands to Serbia, demanding they halt all anti-Austro-Hungarian activity, dissolve certain political groups, remove certain political officers, and arrest those within its borders who participated in the assassination, among other things, with 48 hours to comply. Serbia, with the backing of their ally Russia, politely refused to fully comply and mobilized their army. Soon after, Austria-Hungary, backed by their ally Germany, declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. A network of treaties and alliances then kicked in, and within a month's time, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia, France, Britain, and Japan had all mobilized their armies and declared war. The conflict, called the Great War by those involved, was the first large-scale example of modern warfare. Technologies still used in battle today were introduced in large-scale forms then. Some, like chemical attacks, were outlawed and later viewed as war crimes. The newly invented airplane took its place as an observation platform, a bomber, and an anti-personnel weapon, even as an anti-aircraft defense, shooting down enemy aircraft. World War I, also known as the Great War, lasted from July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918. World War I was fought between the Allied powers and the Central Powers. The main members of the Allied powers were France, Russia, and Britain. The United States also fought on the side of the Allies after 1917. The main members of the Central Powers were Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. Causes of the war. There was no single event that led to World War I. The war happened because of several different events that took place in the years building up to 1914. 1. The new international expansionist policy of Germany. In 1890, the new Emperor of Germany, Wilhelm II, began an international policy that sought to turn his country into a world power. Germany was seen as a threat by the other powers and destabilized the international situation. 2. Mutual defense alliances. Countries throughout Europe made mutual defense agreements. These treaties meant that if one country was attacked, allied countries were bound to defend them. The Triple Alliance, 1882, linking Germany with Austria-Hungary and Italy. The Triple Entente, which was made up of Britain, France, and Russia, concluded by 1907. Thus, there were two rival groups in Europe. 3. Imperialism. Before World War I, Africa and parts of Asia were points of contention among the European countries because of their raw materials. The increasing competition and desire for greater empires led to an increase in the confrontation that helped push the world into World War I. 4. Militarism. As the world entered the 20th century, an arms race had begun. By 1914, Germany had the greatest increase in military buildup. Great Britain and Germany both greatly increased their navies in this time period. This increase in militarism helped push the countries involved into war. 5. Nationalism. Much of the origin of the war was based on the desire of the Slavic peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina to no longer be part of Austria-Hungary, but instead be part of Serbia. In this way, nationalism led to the war. 6. Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. In June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, was shot while he was visiting Sarajevo in Bosnia. He was killed by a Serbian person who thought that Serbia should control Bosnia instead of Austria. Because its leader had been shot, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. As a result, Russia got involved as it had an alliance with Serbia. Germany then declared war on Russia because Germany had an alliance with Austria-Hungary. Britain declared war on Germany because of its invasion of neutral Belgium. Britain had agreements to protect both Belgium and France. Some of the major battles during the war included the First Battle of the Marne, Battle of the Somme, Battle of Tannenberg, Battle of Gallipoli, and the Battle of Verdun. Phases of the war. The conflict developed on several fronts in Europe, Africa, and Asia. The two main scenarios were the Western Front, where the Germans confronted Britain, France, and, after 1917, the Americans. The second front was the Eastern Front, in which the Russians fought against Germans and Austro-Hungarians. After a brief German advance in 1914, the Western Front was stabilized and a long and brutal trench warfare started. It was a war of attrition. The Western Front remained immovable. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Germans advanced, but not decisively. In 1917, two events changed the course of the war. The United States joined the Allies, and Russia, after the Russian Revolution, abandoned the conflict and signed a separate peace. Finally, after the German offensive in the spring of 1918, the Allied counterattack managed to force a decisive retreat of the German army. The defeat of Germany's allies and the revolution in Germany that dethroned German Emperor Wilhelm II brought about the signing of the armistice on November 11, 1918. The Great War was over. Consequences of the war. Economic consequences. World War I cost the participating countries a lot of money. Germany and Great Britain spent about 60% of the money their economy produced. Countries had to raise taxes and borrow money from their citizens. They also printed money in order to buy weapons and other things they needed for war. This led to inflation after the war. Political consequences. World War I brought an end to four monarchies: Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, Emperor Charles of Austria, and the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire had to step down. New countries were created out of old empires. Austria-Hungary was carved up into a number of independent states. Russia and Germany gave land to Poland. Countries in the Middle East were put under the control of Great Britain and France. What was left of Ottoman Empire became Turkey. Social consequences. World War changed society completely. Birth rates declined because millions of young men died. 8 million died. Millions wounded, maimed, widows and orphans. Civilians lost their land and fled to other countries. The role of women also changed. They played a major part in replacing men in factories and offices. Many countries gave women more rights after the war had ended, including the right to vote. The upper classes lost their leading role in society. Young middle and lower class men and women demanded a say in forming their country after the war. Treaty of Versailles. On June 28, 1919, World War I officially ended with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was an attempt to prevent the world from going into another war. It is organized in several chapters, each having different clauses. Territorial clauses. France regained Alsace and Lorraine. Eupen and Malmedy passed into the hands of Belgium. Eastern territories were annexed by Poland, which caused East Prussia to become territorially isolated. Danzig and Memel, former Baltic German cities, were declared free cities. Denmark annexed northern Schleswig-Holstein. Germany lost all of its colonies and the victors annexed them. Military clauses. Drastic limitation of the German Navy. Dramatic reduction of the army. only 100,000 troops, prohibition of having tanks, aircraft, and heavy artillery, demilitarization of the Rhineland region, war reparations. The treaty declared Germany and its allies responsible for all loss and damage suffered by the Allies, and as a consequence, they were forced to pay war reparations to the victors. Other treaties. The Treaty of Neuilly, signed with Bulgaria. The small Balkan country suffered several territorial losses in the benefit of Romania, Greece, and a brand new country, Yugoslavia. The Treaty of Sèvres, 1920, signed with Turkey. The Treaty of Sèvres was extremely hard and led to the Turkish National Rebellion, which was led by Kemal Ataturk. This also led to the war against Greece, which occupied large areas of Anatolia. However, the war also brought other important social and ideological changes. The U.S., which had won the war but had not experienced the conflict on its territory, became a first world power. The mass mobilization of men led to the incorporation of women into the workforce, which was a major step forward for women's rights. The triumph of the Soviet Revolution, also known as Russian Revolution, and the social crisis that followed the war encouraged workers in many countries to protest, creating a pre-revolutionary climate. The extreme nationalism experienced during the war, coupled with fear of a communist revolution, encouraged the middle-class populations of some countries to move to the extreme right. This created a hotbed of fascist movements. Creation of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was an international diplomatic group developed after World War I as a way to solve disputes between countries before they erupted into open warfare. A precursor to the United Nations, the League achieved some victories but had a mixed record of success. At 5 a.m. on November 11, 1918, the armistice document was signed in Foch's railway carriage at Rotonde. At 11 a.m. on the same day, World War I came to an end. It was concluded after the German government sent a message to American President Woodrow Wilson to negotiate terms on the basis of a recent speech of his in the earlier declared 14 points, which later became the basis of the German surrender at the Paris Peace Conference, which took place the following year.